Eryx Hale never believed in places that could remember people. To him, a town was just buildings, roads, and routines stitched together by time. But the moment he stepped back into Velmora Bay, after 5 long years, something shifted in his chest, something quiet but undeniable, like a forgotten melody suddenly playing again in his mind. The wind carried the same soft salt it used to. The ocean still stretched endlessly, calm yet heavy with secrets. Even the sky looked familiar, as if it had been waiting for him. He told himself it was just nostalgia, just memory playing tricks on him. But deep down he knew it wasn't just that it was her. He hadn't said her name in years, not even in his thoughts. But now it echoed inside him with every step. He took through the narrow streets Lyra Solin. He didn't plan to see her. In fact, he had promised himself he wouldn't. He came back for work for a temporary contract fixing old boats at the harbor. That's what he told everyone and himself. But the truth was heavier. He came back because no matter how far he went, something in him had never left. The bell above the bookstore door rang softly when he pushed it open. It was instinct, not intention, that led him there. The same warm scent of paper and quiet coffee wrapped around him instantly. He almost turned around, almost. Then he saw her, standing behind the counter, flipping through a notebook, her hair falling gently across her face. She looked older, yes, but not in a way that time takes things away. In a way that time adds depth, like layers of meaning, beneath something already beautiful. For a moment he couldn't move. She looked up slowly, like she already knew someone was there. Their eyes met and the world seemed to pause. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in a soft, aching stillness. "You came back," she said. No shock, no anger, just quiet certainty. Eryx swallowed. Yeah. There were 1,000 things he could have said after that. Apologies, explanations, excuses, but none of them came out. Because standing in front of her again made every word feel too small. "That took you long enough," she added, closing the notebook gently. There was something in her voice, not bitterness, not exactly, something more controlled, something that had learned to survive without answers. "You look the same," he said immediately, realizing how meaningless that sounded. Lyra tilted her head slightly. "You don't take that bad, huh?" "Different," she corrected softly. Silence settled between them. But it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said for 5 years. "I didn't think you'd still be here," he finally admitted. She gave a small shrug. "Some people don't leave." Eryx nodded slowly, though her words felt heavier than they sounded. He knew she wasn't just talking about the town. That night he walked along the shore, letting the waves touch his shoes as if testing whether he still belonged there. Memories came in pieces, her laughter, her voice calling his name, the way they used to sit on the cliffs every evening as if time didn't matter. Back then everything had felt simple, not easy but certain. They didn't need big promises or grand plans. Being together had been enough. And that was exactly what scared him. He had convinced himself that leaving was the right thing to do, that loving her meant stepping away, so she could chase her dreams without being tied to someone who had nothing to offer, at least that's what he believed at the time. Now standing in the same place where they once sat side by side, he realized something painful. He never gave her the choice. The next evening his feet carried him back to the cliffs. Without him deciding to go, it felt like habit, like something written into him long ago. And just like before, she was already there. "You were late," she said, still facing the ocean. Eryx let out a quiet breath, almost smiling. "Some things don't change." This time she turned to face him. "No," she said. "Some things don't." They stood next to each other, close but not quite close enough. The distance between them wasn't measured in steps. It was measured in years, in silence, in unanswered questions. "Why did you come back?" she asked after a while. He stared at the horizon, where the sky met the water in a soft blur. "I thought I had moved on, and I was wrong." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched him as if weighing his words against something only she understood. "You left without saying anything," she said. "Finally. Do you know what that feels like?" Eryx closed his eyes for a second. "Yeah, I do now." Her gaze didn't soften. "Do you?" "I thought I was protecting you," he said quietly. "From what?" she asked. "From loving you." The question hit harder than he expected. "I didn't want to hold you back," he admitted. "You had dreams. Lyra, big ones. I didn't fit into them." She stepped closer, her expression shifting. Slightly, not into anger, but something deeper. "You didn't even try to," she said. That was the truth he had avoided for years. Days passed after that. Conversation, and something changed between them, not completely, not instantly, but enough. They began to see each other again. Not out of obligation, but because neither of them could pretend the connection. Wasn't he still there? They talked more about small things at first, about the town, the people, the changes, then slowly about themselves. Lyra showed him the notebooks. She had been writing in all these years, dozens of them, filled with thoughts, stories, and pieces of her life. Eryx picked one up, flipping through it carefully, then he stopped. It wasn't just a story, it was them. Their moments, their conversations, their love. You wrote about us, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never stopped, she replied. Why? She met his eyes. Because I never stopped loving you. That was the moment something inside him broke completely and rebuilt itself at the same time. I don't deserve that, he said. Maybe not, she said gently, but love isn't about deserving. He didn't have an answer for that. Over time, the distance between them faded more, not perfectly, not without hesitation, but enough for something real to grow again. One evening, under a sky full of quiet stars, he finally said what he had been holding back. I still love you. Lyra looked at him, her eyes steady, almost knowing. I know, she said softly. Do you still feel the same? Instead of answering immediately, she stepped closer and took his hand. I never felt anything else. When they kissed, it wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was slow, familiar, like something that had been waiting patiently to happen again. But love once broken carries its own kind of fear. What if you leave again? She asked one night, her voice barely steady. Eryx shook his head. I want tea. You didn't say that last time, she said. He took a breath. That's exactly the problem. I didn't say anything. He looked at her, truly looked at her, as if making a promise not just with words, but with everything he was. This time I stay. A few days later she brought him to a quiet part of the beach, hidden between rocks. The waves there were softer, like they didn't want to disturb the silence. My mother used to bring me here, she said. She told me the ocean keeps secrets. Eryx smiled slightly. And what did you tell it? Lyra looked at him, her expression softer than he had ever seen it. You? Not long after that, a letter arrived. It was everything she had ever wanted a chance to publish, her story to leave the small town and step into something bigger. Eryx knew what it meant the moment he saw her face. You should go, he said. And what about us, she asked. He stepped closer. We don't repeat the past. She hesitated, then said something he hadn't expected. Come with me. For a moment he couldn't speak. The old version of him, the one who believed he didn't belong, tried to rise again. But this time he didn't listen to it. I will, he said. And just like that, everything changed. Months later, standing in a crowded room far from the ocean, Eryx watched her from a distance as she signed copies of her book. People surrounded her, asking questions, praising her work. But when someone asked, is this story real, she paused. Her eyes found him in the crowd, and she smiled. Yes, she said softly, it is. Eryx smiled back, knowing something he hadn't understood before. Some places don't just remember people, some love stories do. And this time, they didn't leave theirs unfinished.